Welcome, deep divers. Have you ever wondered why your mind seems to, well, have a mind of its own sometimes?
hmm
Why you make those snap judgments, or maybe find yourself stubbornly believing something, even when logic is kind of telling you otherwise?
It happens to all of us.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the incredible, often surprising inner workings of your brain. We're drawing heavily from Daniel Kahneman's fantastic work, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Right. This deep dive is really all about understanding the two fundamental ways our minds operate, and crucially, how that influences basically every decision you make.
Mm.
We'll explore how these two systems, as he calls them, can lead to predictable errors, definitely, but also how they allow our daily lives to function with, pretty impressive efficiency.
Our mission here is to equip you with a richer vocabulary, a way to understand the distinctive patterns in the errors people make,
Yeah.
what Kahneman terms biases.
Mhm.
It's kind of a shortcut to being truly well-informed about human cognition, and we really hope these insights will spark some illuminating, maybe some aha moments about your own thinking.
Should be fascinating.
Okay, so let's unpack this core idea first. Our minds function through two pretty distinct systems. You can almost imagine them as two characters constantly active inside you.
Precisely. Kahneman labels them System 1 and System 2. System 1 is your automatic fast operator. It works with little or no effort, no sense of voluntary control.
Right.
Think of it as continuously generating impressions, feelings, intuitions, your gut reaction, that instant recognition of something familiar.
Yeah, like instinctively knowing the answer to 2 plus 2, or maybe jumping back when a car suddenly swerves nearby.
Yep.
That immediate thing.
Exactly. System 2, on the other hand, is effortful. It's deliberate. It's what you engage for complex tasks, comparisons, conscious choices. It's the slow, careful thinker.
So System 1 is churning out those first intuitive answers, the ones you're tempted to go with, even when you maybe suspect it might be wrong.
That's often the case. And System 2 is the conscious effort you exert when needed. We can actually see it at work, physiologically.
Really? How?
Well, when you engage in a proper mental sprint, like trying to hold several digits in memory or doing complex mental math in your head, studies show your pupils can actually dilate by about 50%.
Wow.
And your heart rate increases too. It's a clear signal of the significant effort System 2 is expending. It takes real energy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Despite System 2 being our conscious, logical problem solver, it's generally quite lazy, isn't it?
Chuckles slightly. That's a fair way to put it. It prefers to operate in a comfortable, low-effort mode. Very often, it just adopts System 1's suggestions without much modification or maybe just a little tweak.
Is there a reason for this laziness, or is it just sort of a design flaw?
Oh, it's not really a flaw. It's more like a feature designed for efficiency. Kahneman calls it the law of least effort. It means we often avoid mental overload by breaking down tasks or even externalizing information like writing things down.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about it. Mundane conversation requires very little effort, right? It's like a mental stroll. But try calculating, say, 23 times 78 in your head while you're walking comfortably with a friend.
Yeah, you'd stop walking.
You'll likely stop dead in your tracks. Mental life is usually this comfortable walk with occasional jogs and very rare sprints. It's all about conserving that precious cognitive energy.
Right. Okay, so now let's explore how System 1's automatic processes, combined with this inherent laziness of System 2, can lead to these predictable biases, those distinctive patterns in the errors people make you mentioned.
Let's start with one you might recognize, the halo effect. This is where our first impressions, say, about a person's attractiveness or confidence disproportionately influence our later judgments about their other qualities, like intelligence or competence.
Ah, right. So if someone looks good and sounds competent when they step on stage.
We just anticipate the audience will judge their comments more favorably than they might objectively deserve. It's System 1 quickly creating this coherent, positive story based on really quite limited information.
So the halo effect clearly shows that tendency to jump to conclusions, doesn't it, to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And at the heart of that lightning-fast System 1 judgment is a really powerful principle Kahneman calls WYSIAD.
WYSIAD. Yes. What you see is all there is.
Right. Our mind is just a machine for constructing coherent stories from whatever limited information is immediately available. It often doesn't even pause to ask if something vital is missing.
Exactly. If you're told someone is intelligent and strong and then asked if they'd be a good leader, your System 1 likely shouts yes, almost instantly.
Without thinking, wait, what else do I need to know? Are they honest? Are they experienced?
Precisely. It doesn't stop to consider the information it doesn't have. That quick coherence, that impulse to jump to conclusions that WISID describes, it's deeply tied to how our brains connect ideas through associative activation and priming.
Okay, unpack those a bit. Associative activation, priming.
Think of it like a mental domino effect. One thought instantly triggers related thoughts, actions, even emotions in a sort of spreading cascade. Classic example. If you've just seen or read the word eat, you're much more likely to complete the word fragment SOP as SOP rather than SOP.
Okay, simple enough.
But what's really fascinating is that priming isn't just limited to words or concepts. Actions and emotions can also be primed by events you might not even be consciously aware of.
Like what?
Well, in one famous study, students who had first formed sentences from words related to elderly themes, words like Florida, forgetful, wrinkle, they actually walked significantly more slowly down the hallway afterwards compared to a control group.
Wow, without realizing why.
Without realizing why. Their behavior was unconsciously primed, and this kind of automatic processing can also create some surprising illusions.
Illusions.
Yeah, like the illusion of remembering, or what's sometimes called becoming famous overnight. You might encounter a completely made-up name in one context. Then, days later, if you see that same name in a list, say, of minor celebrities, you might identify it as someone well-known.
Just because it feels familiar.
Exactly. The sense of familiarity generated by System 1 isn't easily distinguished from the feeling of knowing something is true or famous. And, marketers definitely leverage this fact, playing directly to our System 1.
Okay, so building on these mental shortcuts, these heuristics, as Kahneman calls them, what's another big one?
Another crucial one is the representativeness heuristic. This is where we judge the probability of something based on how well it matches a particular stereotype or prototype in our minds, often ignoring the actual statistical likelihood.
Got an example.
The classic one involves a description of a man named Steve. He's described as very shy and withdrawn, invariably helpful, but with little interest in people or in the world of reality. A meek and tidy soul, he has a need for order and structure and a passion for detail. Now, if you ask people whether Steve is more likely to be a librarian or a farmer, what do most people say?
Librarian. Definitely fits the stereotype better.
Overwhelmingly, yes. But people are almost certainly ignoring the base rate, the simple statistical fact,
Which is
that in most Western countries, there are vastly more male farmers than male librarians, maybe 20 times more or even higher.
So statistically, way more meek and tidy souls are probably out there on tractors.
Exactly. But our System 1 loves the coherent story, the stereotype match. It relies on this resemblance as a simplifying rule of thumb, leading to these predictable errors. We ignore the numbers.
That's a great illustration. What about the availability heuristic? You mentioned that briefly.
Right. Availability causes us to judge the frequency or likelihood of something by the ease with which examples come to mind.
Okay.
So quick question for you. Is the letter K more likely to appear as the first letter of an English word or as the third letter?
First letter. I can think of kite, key. No.
Yeah.
It's easier to recall words starting with K.
Most people say first letter for exactly that reason. It's easier to retrieve examples. But actually, K appears much more frequently as the third letter in English words.
Huh. Didn't know that.
It's just harder to search your mental lexicon for words with K in the third position. And media coverage heavily fuels this heuristic, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, dramatic, easily recalled events like plane crashes or shark attacks get tons of coverage. This makes them highly available in our minds, so we overestimate their actual frequency compared to less sensational but statistically more common risks.
Leading to things like availability cascades, right? Where a media story fuels public panic, which fuels more media stories.
Exactly, like the Alar scare with apples years ago, or ongoing public fear of terrorism, which often outweighs statistically larger risks. What's frequently mentioned populates the mind even if it's not truly representative.
This raises a really important question, I think. Why do we seem to struggle so much with mere statistics, as Kahneman puts it? Why is our System 1 so hungry for causal stories instead?
That's a deep question. We seem wired to see patterns and causes, even in randomness. It leads us to misinterpret things like regression to the mean.
Regression to the mean. Explain that one.
Okay, the classic example Kahneman uses is about flight instructors. An instructor observed that when he praised cadets for an exceptionally good landing, they tended to do worse on the next try. But when he shouted at them after a very poor landing, they tended to do better next time.
So he concluded that punishment works and praise doesn't.
Precisely. He attributed it causally to the efficacy of reward and punishment. But what's really fascinating here is that he was almost certainly just observing regression to the mean,
Meaning,
meaning that an exceptionally good performance or an exceptionally bad one is often due partly to skill, yes, but also partly to luck or random fluctuation. The next performance is simply more likely to be closer to the average, regardless of the praise or the shouting.
so the change would likely have happened anyway.
Very likely. But our minds crave a causal explanation. Shouting worked. Even if it's incorrect. We find randomness deeply unsatisfying.
And this preference for coherent stories over sort of boring statistical reality, it extends to our confidence in our own judgments too, doesn't it? The illusion of validity and illusion of skill.
Oh, absolutely. These are powerful. We often feel highly confident in our predictions and judgments, even when the evidence supporting them is actually quite weak, or the situation is inherently unpredictable.
Like expert stock pickers making long-term market forecasts, or political pundits predicting election outcomes years in advance.
Exactly. Despite mountains of evidence showing that, in many complex domains, expert predictions are often no better than chance or simple algorithms, the experts themselves continue to believe in their specific insights and intuitive skill. The feeling of confidence is compelling, generated by System 1's coherence building.
Why is it so hard for us, especially maybe professionals, to absorb facts that challenge these personal impressions or feelings of skill?
Well, it seems deeply ingrained, particularly in professional cultures where expertise is valued. Statistical studies of performance, especially ones that show limitations, are often ignored or rationalized away if they clash with strong personal impressions or widely held beliefs within the field.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Studies consistently show that simple, statistically derived formulas often outperform expert human judgment in a surprising variety of fields. Think predicting academic success based on grades and test scores, or even medical diagnoses. The APGAR score for newborns, for instance, is a simple formula that proved more reliable than doctors' holistic judgments at the time.
But experts often resist these formulas, right? They feel their nuanced judgment adds value.
They often do. Our System 1 is just excellent at creating a comforting sense of certainty and understanding, even when System 2 hasn't fully done the hard work of checking the underlying statistical facts or acknowledging the role of chance.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now. Let's see how these mental patterns, these systems and biases, directly impact our choices, especially when risk and reward are involved. This brings us to Kahneman's really famous prospect theory.
Right. Prospect theory was a major contribution, challenging traditional economic models. It suggests that our decisions aren't typically based on our overall state of wealth, but rather on changes in wealth potential gains and losses, relative to a specific reference point. Usually, that reference point is our current state.
And how does that change things?
It changes things dramatically. We tend to be risk-averse when considering potential gains. We prefer a sure, smaller gain over a gamble that has a higher expected value but involves risk.
Okay, makes sense. Play it safe with gains.
But we become risk-seeking when facing potential losses. We often prefer to take a gamble, even a risky one, over accepting a sure, certain loss. The pain of a loss, psychologically, looms much larger than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
How much larger?
Kahneman and Tversky estimated roughly twice as large. This asymmetry is called loss aversion. Losing $100 feels about twice as bad as gaining $100 feels good.
Wow. So this idea of loss aversion where losing something hurts much more than gaining the same thing feels good. But where do we see that play out in everyday life? Is the endowment effect related to this?
Absolutely. The endowment effect is a perfect everyday illustration of loss aversion. People place a significantly higher value on something simply because they own it.
How does that work?
Well, if I give you, say, a coffee mug, a little later, if I ask you how much you'd sell it back to me for, you'll likely demand about twice as much money as you would have been willing to pay to buy that same mug just moments before you owned it.
Because now selling it feels like a loss.
Exactly. Giving up the mug feels like a loss, and that loss looms large. It's built right into System 1's automatic evaluations. We feel the potential loss of the item we possess more acutely than the potential gain of the money we don't yet have.
And does this extend beyond just objects?
Oh, yes. It connects to a broader psychological phenomenon Kahneman discusses. Bad is stronger than good. Negative experiences, negative feedback, negative stereotypes, they often have a much greater impact on us than their positive counterparts.
The cockroach in the bowl of cherries analogy.
That's the one. A single cockroach completely ruins a bowl of delicious cherries, right? But adding one perfect cherry does absolutely nothing to improve a bowl full of cockroaches. Bad outweighs good in many domains.
It's really incredible how much the presentation of a problem, the framing, has such an astonishing impact on our choices, even when the underlying options are, logically identical.
It truly is astonishing, and it's a direct consequence of how System 1 operates. Consider the famous Asian disease problem study.
Remind me of that one.
Okay, participants are told about an outbreak expected to kill 600 people. In one frame, they're offered two choices. Program A, which will save exactly 200 lives for sure, or Program B, which has a 13 probability that 600 people will be saved and a 23 probability that no one will be saved.
Okay, A saves 200 for sure. B is a gamble. Most people choose.
Most people choose Program A, the sure thing. They're risk-averse when it's framed in terms of lives saved, gains.
Right.
But another group gets the exact same scenario but framed differently. They're offered Program C, where 400 people will definitely die, or Program D, where there's a 13 probability that nobody will die, and a 23 probability that 600 people will die.
Wait, Program C, 400 die, is the same outcome as Program A, 200 saved, and Program D is the same gamble as Program B.
Logically identical outcomes, but now framed in terms of lives lost, losses, what do people choose?
They probably avoid the sure loss, so they gamble on D.
Overwhelmingly, yes. They become risk-seeking to avoid the certain loss of 400 lives. Our preferences aren't about objective reality. They are shaped powerfully by how problems are framed.
And because reframing a problem takes effort, and our system too is often, well, lazy.
We just passively accept the frame we're given most of the time. We don't do the mental work to see if another perspective changes our preference.
We see this in the real world too, right? Like with organ donation rates.
Absolutely. In countries where the default is that you are an organ donor unless you explicitly opt out, donation rates are close to 100%.
Whereas in countries where you have to actively opt in.
The rates are dramatically lower, sometimes as low as 4 or 5%. A tiny difference in the frame, the default choice, has massive real-world consequences, simply because people tend not to check the box.
Wow.
The MPG illusion is another great practical example of framing. We think about car fuel efficiency in miles per gallon MPG.
Yeah, everyone does. Higher MPG is better.
Right, but MPG is actually a really misleading frame if you're thinking about fuel saved. The difference between 10 MPG and 20 MPG saves way more gas over a year than the difference between 30 MPG and 40 MPG, even though both are 10 MPG jumps.
Okay, I think I follow. It's not linear.
Exactly. A better measure, one that is linear with fuel cost savings, is gallons per mile, GPM, or maybe gallons per 100 miles. But we're stuck with the MPG frame, which doesn't intuitively guide us to the most effective fuel-saving choices. It has real policy implications.
Fascinating. Okay, finally, let's explore what might be the most sort of intimate conflict within us that Kahneman discusses. The battle between your experiencing self and your remembering self.
Yes, this is a profound distinction. Your experiencing self is the one living life moment by moment. It's what feels pain, pleasure, boredom, joy as it's happening. It lives in the present.
Okay, and the remembering self.
The remembering self is, well, it's the storyteller. It's the part of you that constructs and stores the memories of those experiences. And crucially, it's the remembering self that makes the retrospective judgments about how good or bad an experience was overall. And it's the one that makes decisions about the future based on those memories.
And here's the really surprising part, isn't it? The remembering self doesn't just add up all the moments of pleasure or pain from the experiencing self. It focuses on specific things.
That's right. It's heavily, almost exclusively influenced by two key factors. The single most intense moment of the experience, the peak, whether good or bad, and how the experience ends.
The peak end rule.
Precisely. And perhaps even more strangely, the remembering self largely neglects the duration of the experience. How long it lasted doesn't seem to matter much for the overall memory. This is duration neglect.
What are the implications of our remembering self basically editing our past for us like this?
They're huge. We saw this vividly in Kahneman's cold hand experiment. Participants put one hand in painfully cold water for 60 seconds. Then, with the other hand, they did the same 60 seconds, plus an extra 30 seconds where the water was gradually warmed slightly, still cold and unpleasant, but less so than the peak.
Okay, so the second trial was longer and involved more total pain, but ended less painfully.
Exactly. When asked which trial they would prefer to repeat, A significant majority chose the longer, more painful trial
Why?
because the memory of it, governed by the peak end rule, was less awful. The less painful ending dominated the memory, overriding the fact that the total duration of suffering was greater. The choice was driven entirely by the quality of the memory stored by the remembering self, not the total amount of pain felt by the experiencing self.
That's incredible.
Similarly, in studies looking at evaluations of fictitious lives, people judged a life described as uniformly very happy. Then they judged another life that had the same happy period plus several additional years that were only mildly pleasant.
So more total happiness in the second life.
Logically, yes.
Yeah.
But doubling the duration of happy years had almost no effect on judgments of the overall desirability or total happiness of the life. It seems the life was represented in memory by a prototypical slice of time, influenced by the peak and end, not by the sum of moments over its duration.
Wow. It really makes you think about things like vacations, doesn't it? Are you trying to maximize moment-to-moment pleasure for your experiencing self? Or are you focused on constructing a good story and collecting memories for your remembering self?
It's a real tension. You see tourists sometimes frantically taking pictures, maybe almost missing the experience itself.
Because they're prioritizing documenting it for the remembering self, creating those peak moments and a good ending to remember.
It certainly looks that way sometimes. Storing memories becomes a primary goal, even if it detracts slightly from the immediate lived experience.
And this distinction between the two selves, it has big implications for how we even think about well-being and happiness, right?
Absolutely. Our reported life satisfaction, a judgment made by the remembering self, can be swayed by surprisingly transient, immediate factors. Like in one study, people reported being happier with their lives overall if they happened to find a dime on the copying machine just before being asked.
Seriously, a dime.
Seriously. Or people asked about their dating life right before the life satisfaction question, if they'd had dates recently. They reported higher overall satisfaction. It illustrates what Kahneman calls the focusing illusion.
The focusing illusion. What's that?
Simply put, nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you are thinking about it.
Ah, so when you focus your attention on one aspect of your life, dating, money, health, even the weather, that aspect temporarily looms much larger in your overall evaluation of your well-being than it otherwise would.
Exactly. It distorts the judgment of the remembering self. This explains, for instance, why most people intuitively think Californians must be happier than, say, Midwesterners because of the better climate. We focus on climate when asked.
But studies show.
Studies generally show no significant difference in reported life satisfaction between the two groups, despite Californians themselves agreeing that climate is important. When people actually live their lives, many other factors matter, and climate doesn't dominate their moment-to-moment experience or overall judgment nearly as much as we think it does when we focus on it.
So our remembering self, influenced by these illusions and biases, might not be the most reliable judge of our actual experienced well-being.
It certainly suggests that. And it highlights that even our moral feelings, our judgments about fairness or policy, can become attached to the frames or the descriptions of reality rather than to reality itself, which makes it really challenging sometimes to identify unbiased preferences or evaluate decisions purely on their objective outcomes. Understanding these two systems, these two selves, is just vital.
Wow, what a dive indeed. From the effortless automaticity of System 1 to the often lazy but necessary deliberations of System 2, and just the fascinating ways they interact and can lead us into these predictable errors in judgment. You've really shown how our intuitions, while often incredibly helpful, can be systematically biased by things like first impressions, the halo effect, how easily things come to mind, those stereotypes, and even just the way information is phrased, the framing.
Right. And understanding these heuristics and biases, WASIATI, availability, representativeness, loss aversion, anchoring, which we didn't even get deep into, and that powerful pull of framing, it's not about saying our minds are somehow flawed or broken, not at all.
Yeah.
It's really about recognizing the intricate, often brilliant, but sometimes error-prone machinery of our cognition. And we also touched on that deep conflict between our experiencing self, living in the moment, and our remembering self, telling the story later, revealing how our memories can subtly distort our past and shape our future choices.
So the key takeaway then, it seems, is that while these biases are just a natural part of being human, simply being aware of them can be the first step. It can help you pause, maybe deliberately engage that effortful System 2, and think a bit more critically.
Exactly. It's about learning to recognize when that feeling of what you see is all there is might actually not be all there is. Questioning if your initial gut reaction, powerful as it feels, might not be the most logical or helpful one in that situation.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, maybe next time you make a really quick snap judgment about someone or find yourself stubbornly holding on to a belief, even when faced with contrary evidence, just pause for a second. Consider, is this mostly my system one talking? Could there be a hidden bias at play here, like representativeness or availability?
Asking yourself, how is this decision being framed for me? Is my preference actually reality-bound, or is it more about the story my remembering self wants to tell?
Just asking those questions can lead to more considered and, well, dare I say, perhaps more rational choices in the long run.
Okay, now for a final provocative thought to leave you with. If our minds really are so predisposed to seek out causal explanations over mere statistics and to prefer coherent, simple stories over complex, objective data, how much of what you believe to be true about success and failure of the world, in careers, in investing in life, is actually just an illusion of understanding, as Kahneman might put it, perhaps driven more by luck and randomness than we care to admit?
Something to mull over?
Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.